Welcome, Jeremy. Thank you so much for coming back to our show. We always love you to be part of our show as a political analyst and also a person who loves Israel, understands what's happening on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. So tell us exactly what's happening tomorrow with Hezbollah and also what's happening with Gaza.
It looks like the Lebanese government will have a political debate, a cabinet debate about finally disarming Hezbollah and transferring their weapons to the Lebanese army. And the Hezbollah, of course, refuses and wishes to remain as a resistance fighter, separate of the Lebanese army. And so time is critical now because if they do agree to the government's demands, so then the government can get more money from Western nations and help to rebuild the country. Hezbollah has been adamant that it's a no. And on the flip side, in the Gaza Strip, with the Hamas being anti-negotiations, however, sending tons of hostage videos, very bad hostage videos. I'm sure you've seen the horrendous look of Aviatar David. Now, tomorrow, they're going to have the Israeli government will have a final debate on what to do militarily about the Gaza Strip.
In terms of Hezbollah, first of all, so the Lebanese government is going to decide. Okay, that's very nice. Do they have the power to force Hezbollah to listen to their legislation?
No, because the Lebanese military is pretty weak. And Hezbollah, even though they've been battered severely on the ground, they're very strong. Apparently, I read that they want to try and maybe cause riots in the Lebanese towns if their demands are not met. So then now they're trying to threaten. There could be even escalation on the Israeli side to, disarm the Hezbollah, more airstrikes against the Hezbollah targets. Who knows? Maybe even the leadership himself, Inav Qasim,
So,
sorry, Naim Qasim.
so basically, so what is really their strategy into Lebanese? Because they don't have really a strong army. They can't force Hezbollah to back down. Hezbollah definitely won't give their weapons up, to Lebanese. The Lebanese army, as you said before, doesn't have the strategy, doesn't have the manpower, doesn't have really the will to fight against Hezbollah. But is this being done basically as a political maneuver in order to show the West that the government wants to have a new type of government, a new type of regime, and that being so, like you mentioned before, this will bring Israel into the picture.
Yeah, I think that that's really the behind the scenes. That the Lebanese government is really trying to show the West that they're moderate, they're modern. I mean, that really was the real Lebanon, that they were always more moderate than all the other Arab countries because it's a diversity of cultures within Lebanon, from the Christians, the Druze, the Muslims. They've always been a very diverse. I mean, Beirut used to be the Las Vegas of the Middle East before Hezbollah took over. So I think they're trying to bring back, and I think they're actually really want to be part of the Abraham Accords, have real peace with Israel. And Hezbollah is their biggest obstacle.
So I think you hit the nail on the head right there. By showing that they want to have Hezbollah bring down its weapons, throw down its weapons, or give its weapons up to Lebanese, that will show Trump, it will show Europe, it will show Israel they're in good faith, that they want to be part of the Abraham Accords. So then that will cause then for Trump and us, Israel, and maybe Europe to send in forces to take away the weapons because they see that there's a government in Lebanon that wants to be totally different, wants to break the cycle of what has been going on for the last 20 years. Now, if that's the case, and Lebanon, let's say, makes that decision tomorrow, do you think that will impact, not at all, Hamas?
Not at all. Hamas is really in there for the long run. They know the hostages are their only hope of survival. I think the chances of any hostage negotiations are slim. I actually read that the Israeli cabinet might actually agree on a full occupation of the entire Gaza Strip tomorrow night. which could be a major military move to literally destroy the Hamas, sadly, potentially jeopardizing the lives of the hostages. I'm assuming they must have some military strategy for their 20 remaining plus or minus hostages. Um, but I think that the America and Israel both know that there's no more negotiating with Hamas. They do not want to negotiate. They're trying to stall every time, and the lives of the hostages are in dire condition.
Agreed. Nonetheless, I'll be the opposition for a moment, and I'll say to you, yes, it's horrible. The hostages are in a terrible situation. Maybe they can't be saved. But what about the innocent civilians, the Gazans, the children? Is it worthwhile to unfortunately, A, to have them be collateral, and B, where does people say it draws the line that's not called a genocide? And what is a genocide? Is this basically a collateral damage that happens in war?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's part of the reason why they're doing this massive airlift of humanitarian aid to assist the Gazan population. I'm assuming America and Israel anticipate this massive military maneuver, and they're trying to push a massive humanitarian aid to assist the Gazan population. I think there will also be a humanitarian corridor plus safe zone for all innocent citizens of Gazans to retreat when the Israelis go full on in. I mean, I think the other big question that we should all ask is how does, if a full occupation of Gaza take place, how does that affect the Iranian proxies, the Houthis in Yemen? How will Hezbollah respond? The Syrians? I mean, there are some armed militias there. Iran himself, are they going to remain quiet, even though on each front they've all been battered, but they're not been defeated yet?
Mhm.
Mm.
No, if there is basically a full Gaza takeover, then the whole plan of 2005, 2004, this engagement will all be in vain. So that means the plan that they had when Sharon had this idea to pull out and to give a chance to the Arab world, the Palestinian world, to make their own state was a pure failure. Unfortunately, now Jewish lives and non-Jewish lives, because we have Israel and the Israeli army has both, not Jewish and Jewish soldiers. You know, we have Jews and Muslims and Christians are also soldiers in the IDF. And unfortunately, war is war. People lose their lives and they lose limbs. And it happens to be, unfortunately, very, very young people most of the time. Nonetheless, from what you've read, and have you been privy to any type of information whereby there is any type of military way that can reduce casualties, both on the soldier side and both on the Gazan side in terms of civilians?
So the only way to reduce the army casualties is if they do mostly airstrikes and less, ground maneuvers or using the tanks, not the foot soldiers. I mean, that's really the only way to reduce it. For the Hamas side or the innocent citizen side, they're just going to have to continue doing what they do with the Air Force, which is, alerting the citizens or the building before they hit that there's going to be a strike and try to evacuate that building of innocent people. I think Israel believes time is of the essence. I believe President Trump wants this war to end in some way soon. So I think the Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump are trying to do something dramatic in the near future to end this conflict in whatever way it's going to go. Um, but I believe that there's going to be a big escalation on all the fronts once and if this full occupation takes over, because this is really, I like to call it the last stand. I mean, Israel's going to go in. Anti-Semitism, by the way, I'm sure is going to rise. The global anti-Semitism, Jewish lives are going to be at stake. There's been already been attacks in Greece, in Europe, in Hungary, America. Sadly, there's been a few instances, say the least. Yeah, I would love to know your opinion.
Well, let me tell you this. I believe this way. War has to be fought in two ways. One has to be on the ground, but it also has to be in terms of long-range war. The long-range war is the PR war, the public relations war, which unfortunately we know very well. You and I can speak frankly, and for those who listen to us understand that we're coming from a constructive point of view. Unfortunately, the right wing part of the government has been for years been very, very weak when it comes to PR. Very, very weak. The left wing government, I'm talking about the left wing government, not in the 90s or the 80s. I'm talking about the ones who created the state. Ben Gurion, Golda Meir, Abba Even, they were masters of PR, masters of PR. They knew exactly how to get everything on the ground. In the same token, present the case to the world in a way that showed that we, the Jewish people, are the David and the Arab world of the Goliath. We're feeding exactly what Hamas wants. The fact that you have now one state after another state, Canada, UN, in terms of United UK, Spain, France, and so forth, all wanting to recognize Palestine. It may not mean per se anything yet legally, but the fact is, it's creating a snowball that could, in the next year or 2 or 3 years, can really be detrimental to Israel. Again, example: who is now being trained in universities? People being trained in universities, Ivy League colleges are being trained by BDS, Boycott, Divest, Sanction Movement, Omar Bakadi, being trained by Hamas, being trained by Qatar, and so forth. These young students, brilliant as they are also very gullible, very foolish. They don't know the whole side of both sides of the argument of history. So in a few years, they will become the leaders of the UN. They will become the leaders of their particular country. I once wrote in 2019, I don't know if you read the article I wrote in Time of Israel, saying that in 2030, I call it Jew season. I called it a movie after it came to my mind, whereby the UN in September 2030 is going to vote Israel of existence and hunt every single Jew down. When I wrote that article in 2019, people laughed at me. They said, "Why, you're a warmonger." Well, guess what? In 2023, right after October 7th, that's what happened. Harvard, MIT, Columbia were all running after Jews, celebrating Hamas. Now, Julian Assange, the great fighter for freedom and so forth, yesterday just came and had 100,000 protesters in Sydney, Australia. 100,000 people, Jewish Assange, pro-Hamas. So how even a brilliant man like him can be so warped, can be tricked. So you can imagine that's the war here. So now Poland fell because of the camera. I'm going to give you a secret. Do you know why the British left, quote unquote, Palestine in 1947? So I saw this documentary years ago. My father and I was watching it. My father, I told you, was a great Palmachnik warrior, and half the family was the Gun, Begins group, and half the family was Palmach. And my father saw that documentary. He said, "My goodness, it wasn't us, the Palmach, and it wasn't the Begins group, the Gun, who kicked out the British. It was Abba Even." And why was Abba Even? Abba Even was smart enough to bring the journalists to the Haganah ships, the ships that had the Holocaust survivors on board. And at that time, he had the journalists take pictures and video. It wasn't video at the time, it was film at the time, of how the British soldiers were being cruel to the Holocaust survivors. Immediately, those photographs were sent back to Britain. And the people in Britain, the British population, said, "What? This is what we're doing to these poor Jews who just overcame and just went through the Holocaust? This is terrible." And that because Ernest Bevin to all of a sudden say, "Okay, I can't handle anymore the Jewish problem in Palestine. I'm going to hand it over to the UN." The power of the camera is incredible. Hamas is winning the PR war. October 7th became a major PR victory for Hamas. Didn't go down. So the balance now, if tomorrow we go in and we do attack and make an all-out war and conquest, yes, we'll win Hamas, we'll win Gaza. No question about it. But what will happen next 2, 3, 4 years? Will people forget? Yeah, it's true sometimes. Two people after a while forget, war. That's the nature of things. But maybe it's different when it comes to the Jewish people. And maybe people have long memories. And a case in point, why for some reason everyone is so picking on the Jews? We know very well there's no genocide there. We know we're not taking kids and putting them in cattle cars. We know very well we're not putting children through experimentations like the Mengele did to the Jewish people. We know these things. But for 70, 80 years, the Western world has been waiting for the Jews to do a Holocaust. Because now the Jews can do a Holocaust, and no longer we, a non-Jewish world, can be guilty anymore. You see, you're just as bad as we are. So how the question is, how would you fight it tomorrow in terms of the PR war? The PR war, we don't have the money for it. And if we do have the money for it, we don't have the political will for it. We don't value it as much as we should. You know very well, because you're into political messaging, as I am, and so forth, how important it is, the image. Unfortunately, the leaders don't understand that. Our present leaders don't understand that. The past leaders did. Ben Gurion did. Rabbi Eshkol did. Golda Meir did. The right never did. The right, that's always one of the arguments between the right and the left. The left and the right always wanted to have both in terms of having Israel, a state of Israel, but the strategy was different. One said to do it covertly, that was the left. Do it with wisdom. Don't be a bull in a china shop. The other one said, no, be proud and go out and so forth. Well, guess what happens is that attitude causes bad press. You're not going to win minds and hearts. Ben Gurion was able to conquer more land than any other prime minister, if you think about it. And was able, but still, he never knew these things because he didn't know wisdom. So the question is, do we conquer or do we wait? Now, as you mentioned before, we go inside. Will we save the 20 hostages? Maybe not. Because maybe the Hamas will just kill them all, God forbid. Right? So we lost 20 hostages, and we're going to lose the soldiers. Some lives will be lost and wounded. Horrible. And still, Israel loses public image. Right? So what did we gain? What did we gain? Or we wait. We wait. Negotiations, so forth, and everything else. Or we just get the hostages out in some kind of way. Or we do a double do. Let's say we do a Sun Tzu type of strategy. Yeah, we negotiate with what they call the Hamas people, get the hostages out, and then redirect everything. Then go to Hamas. That's another strategy. But to go into a china shop where everything gets broken, yeah, you got the bull inside the china shop, but everything gets broken. And that's the problem. And unfortunately, as well, I don't know if you saw Mendy Potemkin, the actor, a few weeks ago. I was so passionate that how can Jews do the same thing? We the Jewish people are acting like the Nazis and so forth, and the Germans did and so forth. We have gone through all these 2,000 years. He's living in a vacuum. He doesn't understand the reality was really happening. That's unfortunate. We know very well, you and I, we who lived in the West, and we also, quote unquote, been brainwashed by the West. Once you come to the Middle East, it's a whole different reality. It's a whole different reality, how the nature is. So let me give you an example, if you don't mind. I worked in the police force. I work in the police force, and one of my commanders happens to be a Muslim, Arab, who's to be in Gabati Brigade in 10 years serving in Gaza. And I asked him, what do you think of letting immigrants, so not immigrants, but even Palestinians, come into Israel and work per day? What do you think he told me? He said to me, absolutely not. It's the biggest security risk in the world. I asked him why. He said, look, he said, imagine that particular day, the Israeli army had gone into a particular village, and they had to do some type of search, and someone in the village got hurt, was insulted, and so forth, and it happened to be the family member of the guy who just came to work in Israel. So the guy who came to work in Israel is remembering what happened that day to his cousin, to his son, his nephew, whatever, in the village. So he's burning now with anger. So he wants to take revenge. It's a huge security risk. And this is coming from a Muslim soldier, Israeli soldier, who's now in the police force. We don't think that way because we're coming from the point of view of the West democracy, Western culture. This is the Middle East. It's a different thing, different mindset altogether. So as you asked before, what should we do? The question is now, the damage politically that's been done to us is tremendous. What are we going to do? Do we better basically, let's hold off the attack and build up for the next few months back our PR image again, right? Or do we just go through? Now, one hand, Trump wants to end the war, right? So even the head of Hamas says politically now this is a big advantage for them, for Hamas, right? So now they have endless amount of soldiers there. How many can we destroy? Their endless amount of, so to speak, of a whole subway system of tunnels, right? How much can we destroy? It's going to be again. It's going to be a tremendous another year of war. So that's the question. Colonel Bricks, General Brick.
Mm.
He said an interesting thing 2 years ago. He said, release all the prisoners. He said, get all the hostages out, and then hunt down the prisoners. That was a suggestion. Maybe that was the right thing, the right that maybe at that time maybe it was right. Who knows? Okay, we weakened Iran, we weakened Hezbollah, we weakened Hamas a little bit, we weakened the Houthis, but we're discussing uh, a serious situation of where we're going to have a way of getting back Israel's image. From what you've learned, what you've seen, how long do you think it would take before we can re, uh, rehabilitate Israel's image and worldview, or we can't?
Yeah, it's you're 100% right. Everything you said. We have a very bad PR image from we're the new Nazis, and sadly, I think it's going to take many years to rebuild a positive image. But I think for Israel's sake, it's not about having a good image, but having a good survival. And if Hamas is on our borders, we will not be able to sleep well, especially if the borders are not properly defended. And the issue is that what happened in the south can happen in the north and on the Syrian and Jordanian border, even though there's peace with Jordan. But there is armed militias who wish to destabilize that peace. And that's actually where the concept of the sovereignty of Judea and Samaria come into play that they're talking about. Um, so I think there's a whole, I'm not sure that the world fully understands yet, but what happened in Gaza on October 7th changed the entire face of the world. I actually do believe that we are probably going to be looking into a World War III uh, on that scale. I mean, we're looking at a massive global change that started on October 7th, or we could even say from the Russia-Ukraine war.
Hmm.
But it's going to expand dramatically. I mean, in order for us to have total victory over the Hamas on October 7th, two things need to happen. A, we need to target every foreign leader of Hamas, whether they're in Qatar or Turkey or Dubai or wherever. And B, we're going to have to take out Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran, who was the leader who headed and funded the Hamas movement since the beginning. And that's the only two ways that we can have a complete and total victory over October 7th to ensure this doesn't happen. And once those two uh, acts happen, we're going to be different security ball game. both with foreign nations and with the global war. I mean, we know Iran is backed by China and Russia.
You hold
China
on.
is pressuring
You
Taiwan,
hold on a
for
second.
example.
You know 1 second? Just a second. Just a
Sure, sure,
second.
sure, sure, sure.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I'm just saying that the PR is less important than our survival, and I do believe that this could escalate into a world war with different, countries around the world.
Okay. So let's analyze what you just said. When I see PR, I don't see PR as something about being nice. I see PR as something being as terms of survival. That's why I see PR. For me, PR is very important survival because why? We know very well in politics, everything is contacts, your connections, your face, how you present yourself. And if you present yourself well, then all of a sudden you can get a lot of things on your side. Also, I present in terms of PR, in terms of survival, because it's winning minds and hearts. And what happens is, minds and hearts is what ideology is all about. How come you have Hamas? Because they won the minds and hearts of these Gazans, right? Or we have minds and hearts of. Interesting. I just was able to. I saw, Stephen Winston or Weinstein, the great physicist. So he was speaking and he said one of the biggest mistakes that the Americans did was they pushed American culture very, very quickly on the Iranians back in the 70s or 50s, whatever 60s. And so what happened was mini skirts are too fast and so forth. They weren't ready for that mindset. The same thing over here is that minds and hearts have to be one. So minds and hearts to me is survival. That's why Sun Tzu, and the great military strategist, was always saying minds and hearts. Win the war without fighting the war. To go from the inside. So in that regard, so October 7th happened because of military failure based on the Israeli intelligence. That's what it was. Terrible Israeli failure, horrible failure. That means then, had it not happened, still Hamas would want to kill every Jew. Hezbollah wanted to do the same thing. Iran wanted to do the same thing. But everybody was happy with status quo. Everyone was happy with status quo until the dam came down because the dam came down because some foolish person did not take it seriously that there was an attack happening. Imagine had that person taken it seriously, there'd have been no October 7th, right? Everything would still be going on as usual. Hamas hitting us, so once in a while shooting missiles, Hezbollah, Iran, so forth, but everybody living happy, quote unquote, the situation. Sderot would be getting, yes, Sderot always had these massive, terrible attacks, but everybody be going on their daily lives. It's because one or two people didn't take the seriousness of October 7th that this whole mess happened, right? Like the person, the famous the finger in the dam. He didn't put the finger in the dam. Now, because of that, now we have to consider everything else. So let's assume back again. Let's assume October 7th never happened, right? So if it never happened then it would still be what? A political war, a military war, or a PR war. It'd be two things. It would be a political war and a PR war. That's what it'd been. Wouldn't have been a military war, right? But the military war became a big advantage politically for Hamas. So the guy who messed up in the intelligence, look what he got us into. He got from military war, he got into a political war, into a PR war that ruined everything for us. It's a tragedy. It is a tragedy. Before that, we had the status quo. Excuse me. So Hamas is always going to be there until we destroy it, right? But that ideology is going to be there no matter what. That's part of his extreme Islam. It's been there for 1,400 years. You're not going to get rid of it overnight, unless you can change the hearts and minds of your enemy. So that's why I'm asking the question: is it wiser? On one hand, you have to get 20 hostages out. You must. On the other hand, politically, for the long run, what do you do? Because we go inside, we've already people are saying it's the end of Zionism, which is nonsense. But
Mhm.
it's a whole way to rehabilitate our image again in the world. Because, like you said before, it'll take many years. Question: suppose a new leader comes into the fray, has a different point of view, a new way of presenting Israel. Do you think he could do such a thing? That new person could save the image of Israel? Or do we say, no, it's just at this moment, it's just where we are, and that we're in this terrible quicksand, so to speak, in this mess, quagmire, to do what we have to do?
I mean, there's always replacements. I mean, none of these world leaders are here for life. But I always said that the timing of, this unique timing of both President Trump, who's surprisingly won wide-scale American election, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, currently in power, and the fact that they're both here at the same time at this world stage, I think is no coincidence. Both their friendship, their teamwork, and their loyalty to one another is really what's helping to push the balance of good forward. If Kamala Harris, won, for example, and there was another Israeli prime minister, we would be looking at a very different scenario. Many of the Iranian proxies probably wouldn't have been hit. Maybe the hostages would have been released, but most likely there would have been a negotiation with Hamas to be in power, and we'd be back to square one in a few years. Um, what Netanyahu is doing is that he's changing the ball game in a radical way. Uh, no, maybe in a way that it could actually push many foreign nations to declare war. But I think that in human history, there's always a major tragedy that must happen before a rebirth, and we are looking at a massive global awareness, a new awareness of the world, and it's starting with the attack on Israel. And Israel will be looked differently, both positively and negatively. But I think just like what the Bible says, eventually you'll have to stand with Israel or you'll stand against us. And if you're against us, you will receive the curse, the divine curse. And if you're with us, you will be blessed. And I think that we're literally seeing the biblical prophecy now coming back to light now in this major battle. I mean, this is not really just Hamas versus Israel, but this is really the force of evil versus Israel now. And I think Israel now has to finish this war in a decisive way, which Israel's never done in its history.
Mhm.
It has to be a knockout, you know, and the survival of this nation is much more important than the survival of the 20 hostages. We hope, we pray, and we'll do whatever we must to ensure the sanctity of human life for the hostages. But the forces of evil must be destroyed, and the Iranian proxies must be removed completely, wiped out.
Mhm.
By the way, once it's wiped out, there'll be peace even for the Arabs. It's not just for us, but the Arabs can live in peace, the Christians can live in peace, the Druze can live in peace, the Jews can live in peace, and the moderate Muslims can live in peace. So there's a whole benefit. And many of the Arab nations, you see that Saudi Arabia, Dubai, and all that, they all are the moderate nations that actually will stand with Israel, have stood in Israel even during the Iran offensive. And if we can just remove the radical elements, a new dawn is at hand.
So basically, let's sum it up like this way, because another 2 minutes, we'll say this. We're living basically the Lord of the Rings in real time. As we really are. The Lord of the Rings. It's good versus evil, evil versus good. And Sauron wants to kill, and we have to fight against Sauron. All right. That being the case, then, if we really win, what's number one? And then we really should change the whole Middle East and make it prosperous and make it special. That will be, so to speak, the ultimate PR battle victory. Because then we'd show that people say it's in 2025 the battle was won physically. Okay. But by 2030, a whole new landscape had become. And if people see success in 5 years from now, then they'd be willing to say, okay, it was the right way to do it. So that's the strategy right there. Do what we have to do right now, but on condition that once the victory is done, the next step has to be escalate rebuilding the area, escalate making political alliances. Maybe that's why even Bibi said he's willing to have, after the war, a two-state solution. He himself said so. So maybe that's the reason what's happening here. That's the realignment with African courts. They see the bigger picture. If that's the case, then we'll be able to defeat the radicals, the extremists, because what always wins the day? Success. Success. Once
You're
you
also you're 100% right too, by the way, what you said about global Jewry. Sadly, they will also have to be on the front line, and they'll also have to understand that their lives and their homes and their livelihood could be at stake as well with the wave of anti-Semitism that will come out of this. It's already started, it's already bursting, but you're right. The flood of hatred will only get stronger as the war advances, and we're winning. The more we win, the more hatred rises. And the Jews abroad will have to make a stand both to fight back and to make Aliyah, depending on what's the condition.
and we're running out of time. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining us for our wonderful conversation, and looking forward to having that conversation with you. And shkoyach. And
My pleasure.
thank you for the article, by the way. Wonderful. Bye.
Enjoy, spread it. I'm going to share it too.
Thank you so much. Go to. Bye.